Parents of Reddit, in what ways have you almost accidentally killed your children? 1995. My wife is 7 months pregnant with our first. Punches me awake at 3 AM crying because, well, hormones. She's hysterical because we can't be trusted with a baby. We'll hurt it. When I tell her we'll be fine, she says you're freaking klutz. You'll drop the baby down the stairs. 2003. Carrying our 8-month-old third child down the stairs. One of the other kids had left one of those fat crayons on like the second step down. Step on crayon. Foot goes shooting straight forward. I land hard on my ass. Baby gets dropped and lands 2 steps down from me. I had landed oddly, with my left leg sort of tucked backwards. Ended up with a sprained knee from it. I try to free my leg so that I can reach forward and grab my daughter. Leg pops forward, and I managed to kick my daughter down another 5 steps. For the record, she was scared as heck but completely unharmed. She stopped crying within 10 minutes and went on as if nothing had happened. God, I'm sorry, and it's not funny, but leg pops forward, and I managed to kick my daughter down another 5 steps. I completely lost it. God, I feel like a bad person. No kids, but as a babysitter. During the summer, the parents would drop me off with the kids at a swim club they were members at. Oldest kid was maybe 7, youngest was 3. Since the youngest couldn't swim yet, she had those inflatable arm floaty things to wear. Well, at the end of the day, I was packing everything up to get ready to leave, took her arm floaties off, turned to put them in the bag, turned back around, she's gone. No more than 15 seconds with my back turned. Apparently she decided to jump back in the pool for one last swim. There is nothing quite as heart attack inducing as when I looked in the shallow end of the pool, and there she was just standing on the bottom with this shocked look on her face since she had expected to float. I jumped right in and pulled her out. Again, she was only out of sight for maybe 15 seconds, so no harm done, but still, scary as heck. She learned a valuable lesson that day. I was giving my newborn son his first bath and I had him face down over my arm lowered into the water while I washed his back, not realizing I had completely submerged his face. He was probably under for about 10-15 seconds before I realized he was a bit quiet and the reason why. Still feel sick when I think that he could have drowned in my arms. I posted this further up as well, but if it makes you feel any better, infants, up to I think 6 months, but that could be wrong, reflexively hold their breath and open their eyes when underwater. I was driving to work one winter morning in South Dakota. It was very cold out, my mind was elsewhere, and when I was turning into the parking lot, I heard my 4-month-old daughter cough in the back seat. I had forgotten she was in the car, and had forgotten to drop her off at daycare. I was this close to parking the car and going into the office and leaving her there, in a South Dakota winter. She wouldn't have made it to lunch. Still gives me the creeps. 12 years later. Accidents absolutely can and do happen to normal, responsible people. When my son was 4 months old, his dad was carrying him downstairs. His dad sneezed, lost his footing and slid halfway down the stairs on his butt. In the meantime, my son, swaddled tightly in a blanket sound asleep, shot out of his arms like a football and landed headfirst on the wood landing of the stairs. He ended up in PICU with a hematoma and 2 fractures on his skull. After a couple weeks of monitoring and healing, he was fine and is fine to this day, although I worry about early head trauma affecting him later in life. But so far so good. His dad on the other hand still tears up when he thinks or talks about it. Caught my 14-month-old eating a glass Christmas bulb. I went over and slapped it out of her hand. Then I fish hooked around in her mouth. I could feel the glass, but it was too fine to remove. I yelled for my husband to hold down our daughter while I waterboarded her at the kitchen sink. He shot me a curious look, but he isn't really one to pass up a good time. Thankfully, it worked, but I'm also really genuinely touched when people do nice things for me. Thank you. He shot me a curious look, but he isn't really one to pass up a good time. I love this sentence in regards to waterboarding. My kiddo was a tummy sleeper through and through. I kept telling the doctor she wouldn't sleep on her back, but he just kept telling us that she will die if she sleeps on her belly. So I had a sleep deprived, miserable crying child, and I was sleep deprived and miserable from holding her while she took 3 naps a day. We couldn't co-sleep, so something had to give. If we put her on her belly, she slept like a champ. So that's what we did at night. Everything was great, though I felt guilty, until one morning I go to wake her up and she doesn't move when I call her name. She doesn't move when I lay a hand on her back. She is stiff when I yank her out of bed and proceed to run screaming bloody murder throughout the house. She's dead. She's dead, OMG, she's dead. I don't know whether to jump in the car and go to the hospital 2 seconds away or call 911. So I'm frantically dancing back and forth in the front yard. My panicked husband finally yells stop for a second, walks over and kisses our super quiet, very confused and very alive child. I told you, she slept like a champ on her belly. When my brother was about 3, my dad was playing that game where you lift your kid above your head repeatedly over and over again. He didn't realize that there was a ceiling fan directly above him, and put my brother's head into a very fast moving ceiling fan. This resulted in a bunch of stitches and a very, very guilty father. Once while playing toss the baby, I bounced my child off the ceiling. My mum got into the shower with her newborn baby girl, my now 4-year-old sister, who was about 6 months old at the time, tripped on the step into the bathroom and proceeded to throw the baby into the tiled shower like a ragdoll. She is fine now though, I think. I don't have children, but my father almost killed me once. We were at SeaWorld when I was about 2 and I wanted a better view of Shamu. This was 25 years ago and safety precautions weren't quite what they are now. My dad lifts me up high enough for me to see the whale over the edge and he starts swimming towards me. Alarms started going off and one of the workers is sprinting to my dad. He proceeds to snatch me from my father, who was getting ready to physically harm the person that just tore his kid from his arms when the man explained that is how they feed the whale. Horrible story here. So one night, when my son was about 3, I left him in the bedroom watching Blue's Clues until he fell asleep. It was about 9 PM, but he had napped all day so he wasn't tired. I had my stepmother over, and we were having a beer in the kitchen, just yammering about the day and whatnot. About 30 minutes later I go to check on him and gone. Not in the bedroom, not in the kitchen, not anywhere. Looking under beds, frantically searching the basement, thinking he was maybe hiding or something. Not anywhere at all. As I pass by the front door I notice it's open a bit. His coat is hanging up but his shoes are gone. What the frick, it's February in northern Alberta, so it's about -37 degrees and frickin' cold outside at 10 PM. I'm thinking no as I grab my coat and fricking dash out of the house. I'm screaming his name hysterically, running up and down the street, thinking I'm going to see a car pulling over and his fricking body pasted on the road. My stepma yells and waves me over about a block up. Turns out, he left the house, walked down the street, crossed the street. Some old guy almost nailed him with his van. He freaks out and takes him to the nearest house, about 2 blocks from us. I go inside, crying and freaking out, and as I walk into this stranger's house, the police arrive. I let my stepma deal with them while I attempt to grab my kid, but he's in his terrible 3s, and there's 2 other kids there watching TV with him, and the throws the fricking monster of fits as him trying to get his coat on. I mean, full tantrum, kicking and yelling, the works. So here I am, dragging this screaming kid out of a stranger's house at 10 PM, smelling like beer, trying to explain to the police what had happened. They let us go with no issues, thank Christ, and we went home. We never mentioned it to anyone, ever. We were renting a 2-story house when my son was about 2 years old. All of the bedrooms were upstairs and the windows, which led out to an overhang, were the floor to ceiling type and opened on the bottom. I thought I was being safe by putting child-proof locks in the kids' room windows. One day I'm downstairs while my son is napping and a neighbor comes over screaming, "There's a baby on your roof." He had gone into my bedroom and climbed out a window that wasn't locked. Worst thread ever for a pregnant lady to be reading. Just remember that all parents make mistakes, and you're probably going to be a great mom, assuming you meant yourself here, and not just speculating about a pregnant woman's POV. Grandma was visiting and doing some knitting. No sooner had the request, "Please make sure your 3-year-old Grandson can't get a hold of one of those come out of my mouth when I see him racing around the sofa brandishing a knitting needle. Time goes into slow motion. I can't see him and my legs, strangely, won't move fast enough. There is an odd silence. Then the crying. But it is a cry I've not heard before. It's gargled somehow, rounding the sofa. It's a scene for which I have no context. My son is sprawled on the ground. My brain first registers the blood, and then the bloody knitting needle. I turn him over and blood begins spurting from his neck and hits the coffee table. Grab PJ top and apply pressure. Scream at grandma to call 911. Grandma forgets how to use this crazy telephone. Husband runs in from garden. A blur of ambulance, attendants, neck brace, gurney, sirens, emergency room. There are ultrasounds, physical checks, stitches, monitors, and finally an overnight stay in hospital for observation. All is well. Arriving home, grandma said she thought we overreacted. Much later she will be heard to wonder aloud why she is not allowed to babysit. Once while watching a 3-year-old, my godson, we went to a local model train store that he loved. Everything went great, and he had a lot of fun. Walking back to the car, he was tugging at my hand and said I want to run. We'd made it past the last car in the lot except ours. No visible moving cars anywhere ahead of us, and it looked like absolute clear, safe sailing all the way back to our parked car. So, I let go and said, go ahead, run. It all seems so predictable now. He ran about 5 feet forward into the completely empty parking lot, towards our car, then did a 180-degree turn with a speed and agility that would make a hummingbird proud, and took off back the way we came, back into the busy part of the parking lot. Trust me when I tell you that it is simply not possible for a 185-pound adult to change direction that quickly. Fortunately, I still had the presence of mind to yell stop at the top of my lungs. He stopped himself just short of a big SUV with its backup lights on. I think the driver may have seen him. I don't know. Anyway, here's what I learned about small kids. Just because traveling in a certain direction is obvious and natural to you does not mean your toddler thinks the same thing. All directions of travel are on the table. Toddlers can maneuver much more quickly than you can. You need to be holding your toddler's hand firmly any place there are cars. Even cars that could never, ever be a source of danger, because they still can be. I'm an avid cyclist and part of my training route is in local park. On Sundays there are so many small children walking around, so I cycle almost at walking speed. Those little fellows can change directions faster than fighter planes. My worst nightmare is one running into my wheels. Single mom here. I had this fake fireplace the first place that we lived, and I didn't know I had to bolt it to the wall. I figured it was heavy enough it would be fine. My 2-year-old son threw a ball and it went on top of the fireplace. As he climbed up to get it, the whole thing fell over. The only thing that saved his life was the beanbag chair we had set in front for story time. The fireplace weighted 200 pounds or more. When it tilted he managed to get into the nook part so he wasn't getting completely crushed and the chair kept the weight off of him. I had to get neighbors to help me lift it up. Scariest moment so far. Not a parent, but my sister took care of me a lot when I was a baby. One day I was playing in the laundry room and happened to get a hold of one of the silica packets from a shoebox. According to my sister, I somehow got it open and ate half the packet while she was in her room. After she found out, she was scared and couldn't tell my parents. So she didn't and just watched me closely for the rest of the day, seeing if I did anything weird. Happy to say, I didn't die. The closest my son has ever come to danger was with my mom. I was there. This was mom's fault. We were loading purchases into the back of the car outside a department store. He was a little over a year old and was strapped into the seat of the shopping cart. I went around to turn on the car and get the AC going. My mom let go of the shopping cart to put her purse in and close the trunk. I stand up to see my son in the shopping cart rolling at a pretty good clip down the hill, through the parking lot towards the 4-lane highway. He saw me looking, lifted a hand and did that cute bending your fingers wave kids do. You have never seen two women take off running so fast. He is a teenager now, and anytime my mom criticizes me, I remind her of the time she sent him careening towards traffic. I'm not a parent, but once, driving a 5-year-old around, In the middle of the road he unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed out of the window. I noticed when his body was dangling halfway out of the car, was barely able to grab him by the leg and pull him back in. My heart had stopped. You avert your eyes for a split second and these kids find a way to lemming themselves. Holy frick, you just confirmed one of my worst fears. My son's just learned how to unbuckle himself. So until I can afford a new car seat, I just hope that the car lock system works. It blocks the windows from opening more than 10 centimeters and it locks the rear doors. This is not something my parents did, but something I did to my little sister when I was about 2 and she was roughly 6 months old. In my defense, I was trying to be nice. The rationale was as follows. I was apparently very fond of oranges. I would eat oranges whenever I could get my hands on them. I naturally thought my little sister would also like oranges. In my infantile mind I then reasoned it would be a good idea to stuff her mouth with as many orange slices as possible so she could enjoy all that citrus. Why goodness. The result of all this is a 6-month-old girl rolling around on the floor unable to breathe until a screaming mother runs into the room and gets them all out. Pro tip: if you have a child seat, always keep your wallet in it while driving. One day you'll arrive at work, park the car, and retrieve your wallet, and discover your child is still sleeping in the seat. I'm not a parent, but I'm 10 years older than my sister and she got really good at climbing chairs at around 2-ish years old and managed to fall headfirst off of the chair. Fortunately I saw it happen and managed to react out of instinct and dove across the kitchen, not fully catching her but slowed her down and she landed on my hands, which is better than tile. I also managed to throw my soda across the kitchen counter. I don't think I've ever reacted so fast in my life. I am also 10 years older than my little brother and sister. They're twins, and I also let my little brother fall off of the couch head first. I didn't halfway catch him though. My mom still doesn't know, but he is fine. You fracking Adama, when you see this, don't tell mom. You have been visited by a dick. Nothing will happen if you upvote, but it makes me feel happy. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.